People who have disappeared to start a new life as a new person. What was it like? And do you regret doing it? Serious. Throwaway. I didn't do any of the ridiculous movie plots you describe. A bit more than 7 years ago I got denied from every Ivy League law school I tried for, leading to an existential personal crisis. I did it all right and still failed. After 2 months working in a kitchen in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, I realized I was going to law school because I had never actually considered what I wanted to do. I took all my savings, a tiny loan from my parents, and moved to South America. After 6 months I got a corporate job. I spoke Spanish already. Then I started a business. The business exploded. I sold the business. I was in Argentina for 3 years, based there while traveling most of Latin America and Brazil for nearly a year. I mastered Spanish and became fluent in Portuguese. Came back to the USA for a year, taught a little Spanish in a charter school, and consulted for a few companies. A year ago I took a job in China. I'm still here. I've made a bunch of money and met a ton of people. I've lived with a kind of autonomy and sovereignty over what I do every single day that I could never have imagined as a college student headed for law school. I see possibilities and value, so many things that the old me didn't notice or value. I've had a few beautiful relationships. I've been published and paid for writing almost a dozen times now. I'm at complete peace with my career, my life's trajectory, and money. I no longer see money as a goal, but as a means to do what I want to do today. Abandoning the path I was on and going off into the unknown was the best thing I ever did. It is still the primary experience that defines the path that I'm on. In March to September 2015, I'm filming a travel, surfing, rock climbing, and rural culture documentary with some old friends. My job on the team is scout. I'll be riding a motorcycle ahead of the production crew to scout locations and conduct pre-interviews. When my contract in China ends, I'm taking a year off to travel and write a book that already has a publisher while I wait for the documentary to start. My parents miss me, and I miss them. I've seen my sister 4 times in almost 10 years. I've lost nearly all of my American friendships, although I've managed to retain a handful of the most important ones. I'm 27. I didn't fake my death to start over. I just moved. Unless you've done something illegal or owe a shitton of money, just moving across the country will be drastic enough to ensure that 90% of people you'd want to avoid never contact you again. A few months ago, I threw my hands in the air, said fuck it, and moved several states away. The fresh start is awesome, and I'm so much happier now. I have just about everything I've ever wanted here, and I love the fact that I don't have to relive ancient history every time I pass a landmark that reminds me of something. Just cut ties with whoever is causing you grief, regardless of who they are or what their impact on your life is. Excise the tumor, and then pick up and go. Don't ever let them back in, either, because cancer spreads. I have an uncle who attempted suicide 4 times and failed. For his 5th, people were pleading with him to try anything else. I went to a park with him and smoked a joint, and he told me he was planning on killing himself again. We sat in silence and jokingly, I suggested he just start over. If his life was bad enough to end, then he could end his life that he's living and just starting a new one in maybe Arizona or some faraway shit. 2 months later I heard he left out of state and got a new phone and maybe a new name. I found an M&M container with a thank you note and 3 perfect joints a couple weeks after that. I'm sure he's doing okay. I didn't do anything drastic like change a name or fake a death. I merely chose to cut out the terrible people in my life. My father abused me growing up, including sexually molesting me. While coming to terms with this as a young adult, I tried to kill myself. After leaving the mental hospital he mocked me. That was when I saw the light and decided to cut him out. A year or 2 after that my mom decided to uninvite me to Christmas and kick me out the day before the holiday when she realized I didn't intend to go. I left. She changed the locks. I decided to leave totally and merely left town, blocking everyone there on my FB. Didn't want my whereabouts getting back to my family. I live within an hour's distance. Never had a run-in since. No regrets. No, I'm jumping in a bit late, but this has been pretty much my way of living for the past 10 years. Every few years I pack up, move countries and start new. Burner phones, changing emails, and no social network accounts. I don't really have a reason for it, I just enjoy being a vagabond and seeing places. I grew up moving country to country as a child, and when I turned 16 to 17 it just seemed a natural way of living. I've hit around 150 countries so far, and lived in over 20. I'm still young, and I work in all these places. Surf instructor, running hostels, bartender, teacher, etc. Okay. For me things are a little different, but I guess I will still tell the story. 4 years ago, after I finished high school I started to go to college, but then it came financial crisis at my family, had to leave college. I couldn't get a job because the country where I live sucks. And then my parents started telling me that I had to work, not just to stay. What they didn't know, that I was trying so hard to find a job, but it was impossible. After a couple of months a friend of mine who lives in Finland came back home and we talked. He told me, why don't you come with me there and have new start? I was like, hell yeah, right away. So I went to Finland. Over there my friend had a construction company, so I started working immediately. The payment was great, I was making good money. I also started getting lessons to learn Finnish. Man, that language is so hard. Things were looking bright until one night. It was Saturday night and we went to this party with some girls and my friend having a nice time. In a moment I lost my friend, and one of the girls told me he was outside. When I went outside 3 guys were beating the shit out of him. So I grabbed a bottle of beer and hit one in the head, and then starting punching the other one. So the fight stopped. We were both fine but little bruised. The police came and took me to the station. Since I still wasn't a Finnish resident they sent me back home and not allowing me to enter their country for 5 years. I dropped everything and left without telling anyone where I was going. I hardly packed anything, just grabbed what I needed and left the state. I go by a different name now, and I have no regrets. I was in a terrible place and now I'm so much happier. I think the only difficult thing is how to figure out who I'm now. I spent so much time living for the people around me that I didn't even know who I was. Do I even really like to bowl? Is this really how I want to dress? But I get to relearn and re-explore myself slowly, and it's a wonderful journey. My story is definitely less extreme than some on here, but it is probably more realistic for those of you considering a big change. And I didn't have to completely restart my life. I got married about 15 years ago and was on track for medical school. We were excited about our prospects, but we wanted our lives to be an adventure. The expectation was that we would move to Boston and work 80 hours a week. It would have given us both strong careers, but so I went to medical school in Ireland. She got a job in Dublin. I worked hard through medical school, but our weekends were in Paris, Rome, Budapest, Istanbul, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Venice, Porto, Tunis, Athens, Oslo, Berlin, and so many more. We could never have afforded even 2 of these trips from the States, but from Dublin they were dirt cheap. Our target airfare was £15 each way. We lost a lot of friends in those 6 years, but not the good ones. And goddamn, it was an adventure. I was always the one that my friends would pick on. Got high grades, so got called the nerd. Had a boyfriend, was labeled as the slut. Traveled a bit, suddenly I'm a snob. Wanted to go study something other than education or nursing, the standard fields they all chose. They accuse me of thinking I'm better than I really am. This went on for 9 years. Didn't matter if whatever they picked on me about was something one of them also did. I was the punching bag. Obviously as a young girl stuff like this has an influence on how you see yourself. So by the time we were in our final year in school, I practiced my hobbies in secret, didn't really engage in social activities, kept to myself, always scared of what they will think. I internalized everything. It got to a point where I cut myself in secret. That's a story for another day. Finally, while on holiday in the middle of my matric year, I met a group of people, eclectic and weird bunch of hippies. They were awesome, who I hung out with for the 3 weeks I was away. They were all so different, but they fit in so well with each other because they respected the fact that everyone needs to be their own person. That's when I decided, fuck it, I'm done with all the crap, and I'm done with the people. So I spoke to my parents, told them my plans, and they agreed to let me do it. After school I moved 1500 kilometers away from where I grew up. Lived in residence at varsity, studied what I wanted to without the constant negativity. I met my now best friends there. They're wonderful. I know more about who I'm now, still learning a lot, and I'm not afraid to be myself anymore. It's so freeing. I never told anyone there where I went, or that I was leaving. It's been 6 years without them, and with no contact with anyone from my hometown. It's the best thing I've ever done for myself. My parents moved from there the same year that I left as well. I've never been happier. My only regret is that it took me so long to realize how poisonous those people were to my health. I moved from Oregon to Ohio about 4 years ago without really telling anyone. A lot of people probably assumed I'd disappeared, but really just left suddenly. I did it because I was sick of the way my life was going and didn't really see any light ahead. After taking off and traveling across the country I learned a few things, met a couple awesome people, made some amazing memories. But all in all things were pretty much the same. I realized that I could go wherever I want, but it was always gonna be me that arrived. I think now that the only really to change your life is to change yourself. I know that sounds cliche, but that's what I learned. Like they say, get on a plane in California an asshole. Get off a plane in New York an asshole. I don't plan to fake my death or anything, but I'm planning a move in the coming weeks. I have a bit of cash saved up, and I'm actively seeking employment at the new location. Once I have a few nibbles there I'm buying a one-way bus ticket, and I'm not looking back. 400 miles away, and no former friends or family members to bother me. I'll let you know how it goes. Edited to add. For those of you who are curious, I have moved. I had about $3,500 in the bank to spend. I posted an ad on Craigslist, believe it or not, seeking temporary housing, and was contacted by a local who agreed to let me stay for a couple of weeks, just as long as I paid the agreed on amount up front. Once I had that ironed out after emails and phone calls, I packed a bag with the stuff I wanted to take, and I walked to the bus station. I went in blind, but I knew that, if worse came to worse, I could find some place for a couple of days, if everything fell through. My original estimation was incorrect. My new home ended up being 600 miles away from my old home. I arrived, paid my rent for the agreed upon 2 weeks, and visited 4 other longer term places for rent. As of right now I'm away from my old life. I have a longer term place to live. My rent has been paid for 2 more months, and I have a couple of job prospects. I'm still unemployed, but the only thing I have to pay for in the coming months is food, and I have enough for that. When I was 17 I up and moved a few states away. Didn't tell a single soul. I was sick of being picked on and harassed. I had a drug problem. My friends were all dying. My mom died when I was young, and my dad left me after she died, so I was taken into foster care. After I was taken into foster care I was homeschooled and never got the social integration that I so badly needed. I was isolated to the foster family. They refused to let me hang out with anyone, have friends, girlfriends, etc. I started acting out at like 14, over 15 years old, doing drugs and shit to feel like a person. My lack of social skills got me beat up and stepped over every day. I just wanted a friend though. Anyone I would hang out with would steal my money or talk shit behind my back. I guess the teenage experience. So one day, I decided to just leave. I had a lot of people that knew me. I had family, not a real mom or dad, but I do have blood relatives. And, yeah, the story is fucked up too actually. I took some acid, had a realization that anyone I cared about was dead, and I would be too, if I didn't destroy myself, I'd kill myself. So, tripping sack, I decided to grab a bag of clothes and hop on the next train out. No money, not even a wallet. Just a small duffel with a blanket and about 2 days worth of clothes. I snuck on the train, went 4 hours, and got off when I felt like it. I begged for bus money and slept on the street and random strangers' couches for about a year. The rest of the story is kind of boring, just a lot of struggling. I will say, it was the best choice I ever made. I was going nowhere, and it took a damn lot of work, but I made myself into something. I have my own place, a car made last year, I got my JED, go to college, work as an EMT, and also work at MIT. None of that would have been possible without leaving. It was refreshing. Nobody knew me. I wasn't a failure to people up here. I wasn't that weird kid. I wasn't being bullied to the point of suicide. Nobody really knew my situation. Well, anyone I was talking to as friends anyways. But that doesn't matter now. People don't matter to me. I concentrate on my own life, my own well-being. I left because I had no one. Now I realize that people aren't worth it. They're selfish and out for their own well-being. Most of them anyways. Now I'm content with nobody. I'm content with reaching my goals and being the person I aim to be on a daily basis. Someone who is there for whoever needs it, as a shoulder to cry on, a door to be opened, a person to vent to, a couch to crash on. I guess I'm rambling now. Hope at least someone gets to read my experience. My experience is more recent. I left about a month ago. No real responsibilities or debts and meager savings. Packed a bag one night and hit the road the next morning. Life is good so far. I've met some great people. I've stepped way outside of my comfort zone. I've got a new job and, finally, a place to live, and I've never been happier. There are people I miss, of course, but I know I'm doing the right thing. It's kind of a scary time in my life right now, but I know I'll be a happier and healthier person in the long run. Detroit to Hokkaiman. Not really disappeared, but gave up my life and moved halfway across the world. Have only gone back about 2 weeks total in last 5 years. I'm from Detroit, so yeah, any change was an improvement. My life in general was totally invigorated from starting anew. Leaving my possessions made me less stressed and more into activity than possession. Got a great job and learned a new language fluently. I'm glad I did.